Welcome to the Economy Magazine. I'm Binyamin. Tjong-Alvares with the top reports. Today's reports include the oil facilities of South Sudan went from being an asset to being a liability. And in Israel, social justice remains a hot topic ahead of the elections. First, the headlines. Stocks fell and the dollar held firm on Monday after higher than expected U.S. jobs numbers stoked prospects of an earlier than expected rate hike. European stocks opened lower following falls in Asia and a drop on Wall Street on Friday. The U.S. economy added 295,000 new jobs in February, and the unemployment rate fell to a more than 6.5-year low of 5.5%. This raised outlooks of a rate rise that could come as early as June. In Europe, most Eurozone government bond yields also fell on the first day of the European Central Bank's €1 trillion bond buying program. High-end electric vehicle maker Tesla Motors on Monday said it is cutting jobs in China after missing a sales target in the world's biggest car market. Under a restructuring plan launched earlier this year, some positions are being eliminated while others are added, but overall headcount has gone down. A report in the Economic Observer newspaper last week said Tesla was eliminating 30% of its staff in China, but Tesla declined to specify. China sales have underperformed Tesla's aggressive targets, and company chief Elon Musk said he would fire overseas executives if they fail to turn around operations. President Dilma Rousseff asked Brazilians on Sunday to remain patient amid rising energy and food prices while the economy remained at a standstill. Rousseff also called on Brazilians to back fiscal austerity policies, noting that the belt tightening will last as long as needed, and results will only show next year. But fallout from the multi-billion-dollar kickback scandal at Petrobras greatly limits Rousseff's ability to push through any reforms. Her plans to cut unemployment and social security benefits met with resistance from within her own Workers' Party. And a decree to raise payroll taxes paid by businesses was thrown out by her main ally in the Senate last week.
Some countries are managing to recover more quickly. Brazil, which was one of the countries which first reacted in the best way in the early stages, is now putting in place the basis to confront the crisis and take a new leap in the country's development.
Portugal's prime minister, who imposed the largest tax hikes in Portugal's modern history, has come under fire for failing to pay his own taxes on time. Tax authorities threatened Pedro Passos Coelho to seize assets for back taxes worth some €6,000 between 2003 and 2007. The media also accused Passos Coelho of having had debts with Social Security between 1999 and 2003, and that he still owes over €5,000. The Prime Minister, who is vying for re-election this year, said he was not aware that payments were compulsory in his particular case at the time.
I don't have any debts to the tax service, and if in the past, in relation with the fiscal administration, I declared and paid taxes past the deadline, I had to pay fines and interest like any other citizen.
The Thar Jat oil treatment facility in South Sudan was once a collecting and processing point for crude oil pumped out of nearby wells for export to oil-thirsty Asian economies. Today, all that remains is a looted, leaking ruin and thick black puddles which gradually contaminate local drinking water.
Thick black puddles reflect what is left of the Thar Jat oil treatment facility in South Sudan. Situated in the remote bush of northern Unity State, the plant once handled oil from surrounding wells, operated by the Sud Petroleum Operating Company. But like many other facilities, it has been left in ruins following the outbreak of civil war in December 2013. The oil workers and anything of value is long gone, but dangerous waste remains.
The situation we saw here was far worse than I expected. We saw massive leakages of oil, which was coming out from tubes, from oil containers. We also saw chemicals that were allowed to seep into the soil.
Water samples taken by the NGO Sign of Hope between 2009 and 2013, even before the war broke out, reveal that the groundwater has been contaminated by the dumping of waste products from the treatment process. These include salt and lead. The aid group is also investigating reports of birth defects and other serious illnesses they suspect are linked to the pollution.
The increasement of the total dissolved solid, it has more chemicals like lead. And this lead can cause, as I said earlier, brain damage, nervous system. It can kill the fetus, cause abortion with abnormalities.
Agar Jok, a mother of 8, walks for 2 hours twice a day to fetch water from a small tributary of the White Nile, rather than drinking from the local pump here in Rare. When her daughter drank from the pump, she had to be taken to the local hospital.
The water we get here is salty, and when you drink it, it can cause diarrhea and vomiting for the children. So it's better that we walk a distance and get water from the stream. Even if it's far away, it's better.
Since the war broke out, South Sudan's oil exports have tumbled by roughly a third to a half, a major blow to the economy of one of the world's poorest countries. But for the people living nearby, it's not oil they want, just water that is safe to drink.
Mobile technology has gradually developed beyond mobile phones, including innovations such as responsible luggage and future-forward pocket watches. But what lies ahead in the mobile industry? And as everybody waits the official launching of the Apple Watch, I-24 News journalist Natalie Ehrlich interviews one of the industry's experts to bring us more info on the future of the mobile industry.
The Mobile World Congress closed off in Barcelona, one of the globe's largest mobile industry gatherings, if not the biggest, with several tens of thousands there in attendance. And some of the topics on this year's agenda included new security challenges as well as sustainable growth powered by mobile technology. Now, the conference is also just as much a networking event, as startups hope now to catch the eye of seasoned international investors, such as our next guest. Now, joining us live from Palo Alto, California is John Malloy of Blue Run Ventures. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Natalie.
Well, you regularly attend these events. How would you describe the atmosphere there this year? You just got back from Barcelona.
I did. I think, well, every year it started, the whole show has been going on for so long. It goes way back to Cannes, and I've been going probably for 14 years now. It strikes me every year that it just seems to get bigger and bigger. The scale of it is pretty amazing, but of course the scale of the mobile industry keeps on growing as well.
What are the trends that you're looking at? Did anything at the event surprise you?
Less and less so. I heard your intro. Primarily, I view it as a networking event. It really is. It's really a global meeting place. I often meet a lot of friends from Israel there, as well as everywhere else in the world. I think probably the biggest change from who attends over the last 3 to 4 years is that you really see a lot of Chinese manufacturers, ODMs there, whereas before it was very European-centric. So the demographics of the show itself is really shifting to reflect the demographics of mobile more broadly.
Do you think that changes the tech itself, that there's any difference in that side of things, or is it just in terms of cultural differences that we're seeing here?
Well, the thing that's changed the most is really the structure of the industry itself. When I first started going, it was very European-centric. Nokia was, the dominant manufacturer. This is really a show it used to be for the network manufacturers, the network OEMs, but really the handset manufacturers have been to the fore for 10 years or more. And 10 years ago, it very much was driven by Nokia. What's odd about the show now is that it's kind of driven by the person who's not there. Everybody is, doing launches and trying to show that they're at the cutting edge of innovation with their handsets, with various devices, and yet, the big overhang is what's Apple going to do. And I think this was probably the most extreme year for that, because as we all know, Apple's going to announce the watch likely this Monday from Palo Alto. So, I think that was kind of a little bit in the background of this show, and maybe gave it a different feel than it normally has.
Interesting. Well, you did mention your interest in Israeli technology. What are you most excited about now? What did you notice there from the Israeli tech side?
Well, Israeli tech in general has been very, very strong in communications for a long time. With the advent of Waze, I also now see more Israeli, there's always been great technology teams, but I now see more of a willingness to try consumer-facing things with the success of Waze. So it's a mix. I think there's a much broader representation of ideas and startups from Israel than there used to be because of the maturation of that market as well.
Well, you mentioned Waze. Tell us about how you first discovered Waze.
Sure. Well, you know the old saying, success has 1,000 fathers. This is one. So obviously Waze was a big success. So there's many people who introduced me to the founders of the company, or a handful of people, and I appreciate that. But actually, the first time that I actually met the founders was at Mobile World Congress. It was February of 2008, and the company at the time was called LinkMap. Mm-hmm. And we met in Barcelona. We had been in dialogue before, but Barcelona was kind of the logical meeting point because I was going to be there and they were coming in from Israel. So that's how it all started.
Well, what stood out to you about Waze?
The real bet on Waze was that if you remember way back in 2008, the iPhone had been launched. Everybody had announced a smartphone. Every vendor at Mobile World Congress at the time had announced a smartphone. So the one trend that you could really count on was that every handset would have a GPS chip. And once everybody had a GPS chip, then the timing was right for something like Waze, which essentially sits atop. It's a service that sits atop all the different cell phones with location-aware devices. And so that was the enabling layer that had been missing up until that point. And that was really the first bet. The second bet was there was a computer science idea that Ehud, the founder, really was at the forefront of, and that was that we could actually build an accurate map from GPS traces. Up until that point, the cartography industry was kind of very antiquated. It was still done and still largely done today the way Marco Polo used to make maps, which is having humans walk the earth, right? And then suddenly there was this idea that we could actually build an accurate and then ultimately real-time map from the handsets of everybody who joined the network. That was a very, very innovative and disruptive idea. It gave us a cost advantage and ultimately a data advantage that far exceeded anything that had been done in the industry to that point.
Well, thank you so much for your insight. We do appreciate it. John Millay, partner at Blue Run Ventures in Palo Alto, California.
All right. Nice to meet you. Thanks.
Thank you.
The world news continues to be awash with the geopolitical threats and issues facing Israel, but locally, Israeli voters have different concerns.
When Israeli elections take place, conflict with the Palestinians and tough talk with Iran come to mind for most of the world. On the ground, those issues are important to many, but economics is a vital and underserved subject for a great deal of Israeli voters. And with up to a third of Israelis living below the poverty line, according to the Israeli NGO Latet, it is not surprising to see that Israelis want to address their day-to-day survival.
We're in a special time. There's an election campaign going on, which centers around imaginary geopolitical questions, like the topic of nuclear activity in Iran, while at home, there's no reference to the needs of the simple citizen. People refuse to accept this.
Of course, it was a broad collection of issues that brought more than 40,000 people unhappy with the leadership of current Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to Tel Aviv to call for a change in government when voters cast their ballots on March 17th.
We believe that we need both a change from a defense perspective, political perspective, a social perspective, an economic perspective.
People are in the streets in advance of the polls, but at the same time, Israeli startups are revered the world over. Inflation is relatively low. Last month, Standard & Poor's reaffirmed Israel's A+ rating, and official unemployment figures have only 5.9% of Israelis out of work last year. As well, Israel may benefit from major natural gas finds off the coast, though many Israelis don't expect that money to find its way into the public purse. The economic pie in Israel is growing, it seems, but most Israelis see their slices getting smaller, which has led some candidates, like former Likud party member Moshe Kahlon, to focus their campaigns on economic issues.
Because they don't have an answer. They cannot explain why the prices of housing went up 17%. They don't explain why 60% in the last 5 years, why the cost of living is so high. It's true, it's difficult, but we see the polls, and we're very encouraged. The polls say that most of the public is going to vote on the 17th of March with the social economic issues at the top.
The upcoming Israeli elections will tell the world a great deal about the direction of peace talks and potential conflict, but in Israel, many eyes will be on the economic issues that affect daily life.
And that concludes our Economy Magazine for today. I'm Binyamin Tjong-Alvares. Thanks for joining us.